All right, welcome back to part two of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. X and KB coming at you as we do for the 40th time. Once again, thank you to all of our listeners, our subscribers, our supporters. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. And this is just the beginning, man. We're going to keep this thing going. And of course, as we promised, we're going to talk about the NBA draft in this part. We got to start off with what's happening in Boston with Jaylen Brown because there's a lot of mixed messaging coming out of there, KB. So on Tuesday afternoon, Brad Stevens sat at a podium for a press conference and said, as of now, this is our team. And Jaylen is here, and all is well. And there is open dialogue and communication between he and I. We have a great relationship. And about 5 hours later, there was a report that started circulating saying that the Boston Celtics are listening to trade offers for Jaylen Brown.
I think that this relationship has soured. I think that, it started this offseason with the comments that he made regarding, a lot of the recap of the season, his back and forth spats with Stephen A. I think that his relationship with the Celtics has kind of reached its apex because I feel like right now there is some type of hard feelings involved there. I do think that, for a lot of people in the Celtics organization that they feel like he's expendable, which is why you're seeing his name flirted out in these conversations. And these ain't I don't want people to I want people to understand like these aren't just like, hey, we're just trying to see what's out there. No, they're like for the right deal, they're looking to move him. If there can be a deal made, they're looking to move him. We saw it already with the Giannis deal. They were legit trying to make that move. I think that he's aware of all of this. So I think that he has it in his mind that they don't necessarily want me or they don't feel like they need me here. I'm more of a luxury to them. I think that Jaylen Brown, in my opinion, he does need to change the scenery because it's been one of those things that you knew that you had two guys that played the same position that you were gonna end up in this type of situation eventually, sooner rather than later. And I don't know. I think this is just one of those things that it was bound to happen.
And are you ready for this? Just as
Go ahead.
soon as 20 minutes ago, reports started coming out that the Hornets are actively engaged in trade talks with the Celtics for Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, and I think that you got a number of teams actually interested because we've seen a number of teams put their even the Houston Rockets, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Atlanta Hawks, the Charlotte Hornets. I think that if I'm not mistaken, I want to say the Raptors as well, but I'm not 100% on that one. But they have and this is to say that a lot of teams could use his services and they're willing to make a deal for him even with the contract that he has, the supermax contract that he's currently on, which I believe he's in the third year of that contract or second year, third year. Yeah. So him being in the third year of his contract, he is extension eligible coming up soon. But I look at it like this. A lot of things were made about the fact that Jaylen Brown said that this was his best statistic. I mean, this was his best year. Although being it was his best statistical year, I think that he did, do a lot to prove a lot of people wrong who felt like that he was not going to be able to lead this team on his own. And he did that. He led them to the number 2 seed. These are things that can't be disputed.
Yes, he did that. And I'm going to answer that in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
But more of these reports are continuing to come out. And I think it's important that we let everyone know that according to the reports that we've all been reading, Jaylen Brown has not requested a trade from the Celtics. So any of the shopping or the rumors that's going on, if it's indeed true that this is happening behind closed doors, this is all the Boston Celtics doing. And
Oh,
Jaylen Brown didn't
absolutely.
request for any of it.
Oh, absolutely. Celtics are going to do what's in the best interest of the Celtics at the end of the day. If there is, like I said, if there is a deal to open back up that championship window, they are going to do it 100%. Because at the end of the day, when it came down to the Giannis deal, they felt like would have brought them closer back into that championship fold after going out in round one than keeping Jaylen Brown. Because they felt like they were willing to gamble on the timeline of Giannis and Jason Tatum together as a duo, and that would have been a much better duo than Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I think that his willingness to I think that this is one of those things that he's not requesting a trade himself, but he is open to playing somewhere else. I do believe that mentally that is where his mindset is right now.
Well, I think he has no choice but to be of that mindset because this is
Right.
the business of the NBA and the business of professional sports, as we know. But you talk about the Celtics wanting to reopen that championship window. I don't know how serious they actually are about doing that, to be honest with you, KB, because with that Giannis trade, they weren't willing to give up Hugo Gonzalez and Baylor Shireman to go along with Jaylen Brown and those 2 first-round picks.
And that was the real head scratcher to me. No disrespect to Hugo, no disrespect to Shireman, but at that point, teams have had to give up. You look at the players that the Miami Heat had to part ways with, and then you look at what you were having to part ways with. I don't understand that at all. That is why what you just said makes so much sense about what is their seriousness about competing for a championship.
See, Jaylen Brown is better than any player that the Miami Heat gave up in that deal, Tyler Hero included. But Hugo Gonzalez and Baylor Shireman are not better than any of the other role players that were included in that deal that the Miami Heat included in their trade package.
And that's what makes it makes it confusing because we also saw these type of things happen with the Golden State Warriors. Remember when Pies was a part of a part of the trade that would have sent Laurie over to the Warriors, and they were like, "No, no, we don't want to give up Pies." And now it came back to bite them. This is a similar situation because if the Miami Heat happen to have more success in the next coming seasons than the Boston Celtics, they're gonna look back at this trade and they're gonna regret it. I think they should already regret it. I think that was just legit stupid because you're banking on the potential of those two players when you already know what Giannis is at his very worst. He is still 10 times better than whatever Hugo Gonzalez and Shireman are going to be. And I think that, the penalty for you was not nearly as steep as it was from Miami Heat. And they were only asking for two young players that they could just basically build around. And I think that you didn't even do that. I think that, like I said, no disrespect to Hugo or Shireman, but I think that those are two role players at best, no matter what situation they're in. I think those are two legit role players. I think that the Celtics I think they overvalue those guys in a sense because of the fact that they are coming up through their system, almost like how with the MLB and they have a farm system that they're overvaluing those guys just a little bit too much. The same way that the Warriors valued Pies, and we see that he was not worth the billing, and that if that same deal was to be presented for them today, they make that deal 10 out of 10 times because of the fact that you're not going to see those type of deals come in often where they're asking for one or two young guys and then maybe a couple picks and then a star. Because if you ask the Heat, they would have gave up Tyler Hero and any first or second year players and 2 first-round picks before they would have wanted to have to give up what they gave up to get Giannis. I guarantee you, if they could do that deal, they would have made that deal 100% of the time. So yeah, I'm looking at that like I really think they made a mistake, and it might be a monumental mistake in the long run because if they don't compete for another championship in the next 4 or 5 years, I'll even say the next 2 or 3 years, then they made a mistake, honestly.
So I want to go back to the point that you said of Jaylen Brown emerging as the Celtics' #1 guy throughout the course of the season, leading them to the second seed in the Eastern Conference. Yes, all of that did happen. But here's where I think a problem came into play. When Jason Tatum went down and was not able to go in Game 7, and Jaylen Brown was reinserted in that position once again, and what was easily the most important game of the season at that point, and they weren't able to rise to the occasion, even though he played well in that game for the most part. But they weren't able to rise to the occasion and overcome and win that series. I think that really did make folks around the league question, okay, how legit of a #1 guy is he for real? Because it's one thing to be able to do it in the course of 82, but it's another thing to do it during the course of 82 and also still get it done in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he's shrunk in that moment. I think that, once going up 3-1, you saw, him kind of I think that he shrunk. I think he shrunk back to that, number two guy type of role because of the fact that Like I said, it's one thing when you're the focal point of the offense in the regular season. Coverages are different. Defense is played a lot less physical than it is in the playoffs. But I think that once Philly was able to like ratchet the game up enough, it kind of took him out of everything that he was successful with in the regular season. The thing that made him an MVP candidate. I think that he wasn't able to do the same type of things. He wasn't getting the same type of looks. Game 7 was a very hard fought game. And we saw that, it was a dogfight, and Philly just made more plays down, late. So, I think that when it came to him being a number one, I still think he can be a legit number one. That's my belief in him. I think that it took a hit, his image took a hit when he did what he did in the playoffs. I do think that once Jason Tatum went down, they were like, so you can do it in the regular season, so you're not a playoff riser, pretty much. That's what they were looking for him to be a riser in the playoffs, and he didn't give them that, especially in this moment where y'all should have closed them out in no more than 5 games.
Like you came back from being down 20 in game 7 too. Like we're sitting there watching that. It's like, well, the Celtics are going to complete this comeback, and then they don't complete the comeback.
And that was what was disappointing because, like I said, I did want that for him just because he could have silenced a lot of the noise that was outside of it, outside the Celtics organization. Because, like I said, none of this is coming from internal. This is all coming from outside. Everybody wanted to see what he would look like by himself and leading the Celtics pretty much in the battle against the Sixers, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, but here's the thing. He did silence most of that noise throughout a good stretch of the regular season. There were people who were legitimately saying, oh, this is Jaylen Brown's team. Now, Jason Tatum will have to fall in line. The Celtics going to have to make a decision going forward. Like, is Tatum the guy or is Brown going to be the guy? Like, these are people who had these long-term projections just based off of that. And because of what ended up happening in that game 7, everything reverted back.
And it was funny because you legit had those questions that he was the guy and Jason Tatum was the expendable one after their championship. That was the conversation that he was the best player on the Celtics because he was the one that won Finals MVP. He was the one that outperformed Jason Tatum in the finals. So that was a conversation that was had before. I think that it was just more so the conversation and the talk that was done after the finals where people found fault with that because of the fact that, like I said, you remember it was a big thing. People were dissecting his comments, what he said, more than ever. And I don't think that he meant it in the way that a lot of people took it. I just think that, he did. It was a great year for them. It really was. It was a great year. Didn't finish the way they wanted, but it was a great year for them to gel together, be able to get as high as the number 2 seed when a lot of people didn't even pick them as being the top 6.
So I didn't view his comments as malicious towards Jason Tatum in any way. Like some people were projecting, what do you mean this was the best season? Jason Tatum wasn't out there for most of it because of an injury, and you're calling this the best season? I more so looked at it along the points of, so you guys had a 3-1 lead in the first round, and then you lost it, and you went into a game 7, and you guys lost that too. So you were the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. A lot of folks, myself included, initially picking you to win the Eastern Conference. And you end up not even getting to the second round of the playoffs. And you're coming fresh off of this and you're saying this is your favorite season. Wait a minute. This is the Boston Celtics we're talking about here. They don't do anything but put up banners for championships. Those were my questions I had around that.
It was the timing of the comments. Like that was the thing. Like had you said this 4 or 5 months down the line saying that was my best, that was one of my favorites. That was my favorite nobody would have had an issue, but you're coming fresh off of a 3-1 collapse where you, like you said, had a 20-point comeback and didn't complete the comeback, and you go out on your home floor where because once he was able to prove that he was able to do it in the regular season, I think that was kind of like, okay, we want more. What more can you show us? Because you showed us in the regular season what you are. You showed us that you are, becoming more a complete basketball player. What more can you give us? Because our expectations have jumped even more. Now that we saw that you could do this, our expectations have jumped. Like we can see we can see you get into the Eastern Conference Finals. That's what we wanted to see from you. We didn't expect that. and it not even if you want to take a step back, not say the Eastern Conference Finals, we thought that you actually gave would give the Knicks a legit scare. That's what the thought process was behind it. Because I'm gonna be honest, after seeing how Philly fared, I know that Boston could at least got a game or two, maybe on the Knicks, because of the fact that there was nothing that Philly could do at times. Like they were outmatched, they were overwhelmed by whatever New York was doing. Now New York was the best team, obviously, but Boston would have fared, I think, a little bit better.
And if Jason Tatum had been out there, he for sure would have been coming for blood.
That would have flipped the entire series. That would have flipped the entire series. And to be honest with you, Jason Tatum's return would have made that scary hours for the Knicks. So a lot of things had to happen for things to get to where they went. But I think that the Celtics would have been a much better matchup for the Knicks, and I think that was the matchup that everybody wanted to see, based off of how last season went. Like that second round matchup was a good matchup, and then once Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, I think that pretty much obviously changed everything. So I think that's what it was. People wanted to see Jaylen Brown actually complete that mission, get past round one. But I think that was more so they put themselves in an impossible situation that they didn't need to be in, and that's the reason why like his comments also didn't help him out at all, because like you didn't just lose. Like if you were the one to come back from 3-1 and then lose, we could maybe give you a little bit of grief. But at the same time, you blew a 3-1 and you're not upset. You're not like, where's your killer instinct? Like you said, this is a Boston Celtics. We have championship pedigree. We have a championship winning organization. We're one of the, like, if you're talking about like blue bloods, like we are one of the blue bloods of the NBA, and you're happy about blowing a 3-1 lead. I don't think that's something that you like at that time that was necessary for him to say. It would have been something said behind closed doors. That would have been fine. But saying that how you said it makes it seem like you were more so happy because of your statistical year being the best, not necessarily because of the team's success. And that's why I think a lot of people had a problem with his comments.
Yep, and you talked about his back and forth with Stephen A. that's been happening throughout the course of the past month and a half or so. Well, that reemerged this week. So Jaylen Brown was at a recent event in France, and he said, quote, ESPN is unethical, and Stephen A. Smith is the head face of that. The organization, the players, they were all in agreement. They all knew what I meant by that, talking about the comments that he made that Stephen A. had a problem with. Our team was basically salary dumped. We lost a lot of players for us to emerge and still be in that position. So, yeah, I mean, you may have meant one thing by it, but it easily could have been misconstrued and taken in a different way. And a lot of that because of what you said based off of the timing of it.
Yeah, it was timing more so than anything. I think that there was no malicious intent meant by it. But like I said, guys have gotten dissected for far worse and far less. I think that it's one of those things that, I understand that you were saying it without really the, thought process going behind it, like that this could be taken a different way, but you also have to have some type of awareness going on when it comes to that, because of the fact that how you lost, not just the fact that you lost, it's how you lost. And I think that, once you were up 3-1, people are looking for you to close it out, and you didn't do that. And, it's happened to some of the greats, but I think that the way they responded and the way you responded is completely different. If you seen Kobe when he blew a 3-1 lead, it wasn't any type of, happiness. It was more so about the work, getting back to the work. Steph Curry, the same way. It was about getting back to work because these guys knew that they blew a golden opportunity. And I think that Jaylen Brown, he knows that. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he knows in the sense that, it's probably more so the timing, but you got to save face. You got to kind of, defend yourself against others, because of the fact that if you ain't going to defend yourself, you can't expect other people to as well.
So, with all of these trade rumors that have been heating up throughout the course of the week, and even what we're seeing here tonight, Do you think there's any chance that Jaylen Brown is a Boston Celtic next season?
Yeah, I think there is a legit chance that he still stays a Boston Celtics because, like I said, Boston Celtics have no pressure to really move him. They don't. They could ride this thing out if they wanted to, but they don't have the pressure to if the right deal doesn't present itself. So yeah, I could see a situation where he stays with the Boston Celtics.
Some more developing news tonight. According to a report, Mitchell Robinson is not expected to be back with the New York Knicks. That's a big deal, KB.
Yeah, I mean that was always the thought process behind it. I knew that his name was being floated out there as possibly one of the pickups for a lot of teams that could use his services because, like I said, he showed his work pretty much throughout this entire playoff run. His offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding, shot blocking, rim running, coming off the bench, like there you can't get that type of production from just anywhere. So I think that Mitchell Robinson is going to command a payday no matter where he goes, and there's going to be a lot of suitors out there for him and his services because of what he brings to the team. I think that Mitchell Robinson has proven to be not just one of the best backup bigs, but one of the best bigs that we got in the game because of his skill set.
Yeah. And it goes a lot back to something we discussed last week with James Dolan's comments about he'll spend whatever check he has to spend, but he's not going to go into the second apron again. And this is just proof of that.
Yeah, I think that Mitchell Robinson play. What a way to go out if this is the legit his last game. One of the longest tenured Knicks, if not the longest tenured Nick on that team. Um, what a way to go out. Like I said, with a championship, he helped play an integral part in bringing the championship to the to New York. If this is the way it goes, then this is the way it goes. But he's gonna get a good payday from somebody.
So just give me a few teams that you think are going to engage about wanting to bring in his services, because we're talking about a guy who is essentially just a lob threat and somebody who can protect the paint. Because you don't want him going to the free throw line.
I can start off with a team that they dismantled in the first round. How about the Atlanta Hawks? I know that we talked about they could use a big like Mitchell Robinson. Depending on the price, the asking price, yeah, they can use a legit big like Mitchell Robinson because we saw that they got dominated on the boards in that playoff series. That was one of the teams I felt like could use his services. I'm gonna give you another name, another team that I didn't really think about until just now, but here's another one. How about the Indiana Pacers? With them not having a Miles Turner out there, they could use a guy like a Mitchell Robinson because, like I said, I think he would play off of Tyrese Halliburton very well. I
That
think that
is that's interesting when you think about the fact that they also have Zubac there too.
it is interesting. I think, but I guess I should think about it like this: Are you bringing him in to be a starting center, or are you bringing him in to be a backup big? Because if you're
Oh, I think anybody would more than likely be looking to bring him in as a backup big if he's gonna like really play a strong role with the team. You're
yeah,
not bringing in Mitchell Robinson to have to play starters minutes.
yeah, and that's where it falls down to because it's like if he's going to be a backup, you do need a serviceable backup. I know that we just talked about because it's a lot of teams that have great starting centers, but they don't have necessarily a great big behind them. Um, Now if he's just wanting to get paid, he can always go to some of these bottom feeding teams, and get a good payday, and hey, that'll just be that. But if he's legit trying to get a payday and also win, there's a few contenders out there that could use his services. I know I'm going to ask you, you think the Lakers could possibly use a guy like him?
Yes, but he can't be the only big that they get.
Fair. Fair. Yeah, because when you're talking about the Lakers, big men last year were what? Aiton and Jackson Hayes?
Yes.
Yeah, they need more than one. They definitely need more than one.
And Mark Williams is officially off the market because he re-signed with the Phoenix Suns earlier this evening on a 3-year, $38 million deal. You
Yeah,
go
I
out and
saw
try to
that.
get Robert Williams. As much as I would like Walker Kessler, I think that's a pipe dream because I think the Utah Jazz are going to try to bring him back.
I think that asking price is going to be too steep. I think that he's gonna because you forgot he declined the first offer that the Jazz gave him. So that means that offer may be maybe too astronomical for a lot of teams to even have to pay. I don't. He's one of those guys that's available, but not really. He's not really available. I think he's available for the Utah Jazz as long as they want to keep him there. But I think that asking price is going to be pretty steep. Try to get him out of Utah.
Yeah, but I think they can still match whatever any team does because if I have it correct, I believe he's a restricted free agent.
Yeah, yeah, I believe he is. So yeah, if they have the ability to match it, I think that what they're building in Utah is pretty solid right now. And if they are able to keep him, I think they're going to try their best to.
So it's time to go ahead and get into the NBA draft, man, because like that was a big night on Tuesday in particular, big night Wednesday too. First off, congratulations to everybody who heard their name called, and congratulations to the folks who you may have not heard your name called, but they have signed deals as undrafted free agents to at least be a part of teams for summer leagues to begin with anyway. But highly expected. AJ DeBonta going number one overall. Congratulations to him once again. You know, I've been very high on him for months now. He would wear number 4 with the Washington Wizards. He was not able to get that 3 off of Trae Young, but I don't really think that necessarily matters. But we talked about this a little earlier. I just don't know how the first year of this duo is going to work out. I'm excited for his future, but I don't believe his year one is going to be a projection of what most of his career is probably going to be.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a filling out period. Now he could be one of those guys that, like I said, I do think he's already NBA ready. What he'll be in his rookie season, I think that it all depends on what's around him. Because, like I said, if Trey is able to maximize his abilities, just being the lead guard, and then he's able to be that three that they really need. All I need him really to be this year is a 3 and D player. If he can be a successful 3 and D player somewhere in that, I say for AJ to have a successful year, if he can be a 15 point per game scorer, maybe a 6 to 7 rebounds, and maybe 3 to 4 assists, that'd be a great year for me. For him coming out the gate for a team that's kind of rebuilding, I think that's pretty good for him. If you want me to be honest, about 15, 6 and 4, that's a good year for a lot of guys coming out, but especially a guy who's going to be asked to, he's going to be asked to contribute early on. I think that he has that game too. Like he has the game to do that. I think that this team, like, we're talking about like you have the right mix of vets because you got Anthony Davis. He's won a championship. He's been in playoff battles before. So if you're talking about a mentor and a guy who came in with a lot of hype around him as well when he came into the league, you got guys that can help you get to where you need to get to. But I think that it's more so about you, you know what I'm saying, coming in, putting the work in. Like I said, listening to your vets. Also, you got to develop as well as these young guys as well that are, second and third year players. The Wizards have the right mix of talent. I think that it's just about them putting it all together and then them building on top of that for years to come.
Well, followed by that was Darren Peterson going number 2 to the Utah Jazz. I think Darren Peterson's headed to the better right now situation, but I do have my questions about a backcourt of him and Keontae George.
Honestly, when this happened, I was honestly surprised. I did think that there was a possibility, and not to kind of jump ahead, but I thought that this was one of those things that like Utah and Memphis were gonna kind of flip flop. I thought that it would have been a situation where he was more destined for Utah, for Memphis. Memphis looking to move on from John Morant. This would have been a perfect situation to bring him into, and then possibly Utah go with Cameron Boozer. Um, but I don't know how it'll work. But like I said, with Darren Peterson, I just hope that his availability is one of those things I just don't want to have to worry about at all. I don't know if that was just a thing at Kansas, but he is a legit hooper. Like I said, he can play some defense too. So He's sneaky athletic. So I think that one of those guys, they're going to benefit from each other. But I think that is a crowded backcourt right now because you say you got Keontae George, you still got Isaiah Collier back there as well. So you have guards. And I think that you bringing in Darren Peterson to be the point guard of the future. So I'm interested. I do like what Utah is building, though. If you want me to be completely honest, I do like the moves that they've made. If they bring back Walker Kessler, I think that they're going to be, possibly paying for a playoff spot. Not this year, but next year.
It very well could happen with this upcoming season too. They could be in that 7, 8, 9 mix for a play-in spot that could turn into a playoff spot. But there is one name that you didn't mention, Ace Bailey. Is he officially the odd man out in this?
And if you want me to be honest, I would have thought that Isaiah Collier would have been the odd man out in this. To be honest with you, I think Ace Bailey showed enough flashes last season to warrant like you still believing in him. But I think that Isaiah Collier may be the odd man out if I had to pick somebody.
I agree with you on that. I'll just simply say this. There's only one basketball to go around, as we know. And Ace Bailey did show great strides in his first year, really good strides, especially coming down to the last part of the season. But when you talk about the development of the players, you have to think that the Utah Jazz are definitely more all in on Darren Peterson and his development right now than the continual development of Ace Bailey. And if we have to give more to Darren Peterson to make sure that he's where we want him to be and where we need him to be, potentially with him possibly becoming the face of our franchise, Ace Bailey could be on the move.
Oh yeah, they're definitely investing pushing all their chips in when it comes to Darren Peterson's development. He is the number 1, 2, and 3 like area of focus right now. And I think that with the talent resurgence that you've gotten, just over the past season and then going into this offseason and then, with the draft, I think that there's something that could be said about what Utah can be if they, have everything they need, because I do think they're well coached. I do think that they're well coached. They have the coach that they need. I think that they're building their roster out pretty well. But yeah, I would hate to see Ace Bailey be the odd man out because I really felt like that this could have been his coming into his own season, because last year you could tell he was relying a lot on his athleticism, but I think that he has the people around him that he needs to be around as far as the talent, rookie talent. You have the vet talent with Jaren Jackson, now Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen. So you have those guys there, and I think that it'll be good for them to, kind of help each other out. But I hope that Ace Bailey's not the odd man out, and I hope that it's not Isaiah Collier, but I do think Isaiah Collier is more likely.
Well, Cam Boozer is headed to the Memphis Grizzlies, and I thought that this was an interesting pick because when I look at him, and I don't know where you stand on this, I see a guy who's a younger version of what Jaren Jackson Jr. is. So it feels like they just swapped out their older Jaren Jackson Jr. to get a younger version of him.
Yeah, I'm still trying to see how this fit is going to be with him and Zach Edey. You know, Cameron Boozer being a legit like 6'8", maybe 6'9" with shoes on, 250. I just want to see exactly what type of big man he's going to be. Is he going to be more of a stretch big? Because I want to see, can he consistently hit outside shots, not just outside from the 3-point line, but can he hit that elbow jump shots? Can he be a pick and pop player? I need to see this before I can actually believe. That's why I honestly didn't know what direction they were going to go in. Obviously, they could have used a point guard too, especially with all the indecision going on around Ja Morant. But they went with the best available player at the time. I think Cameron Boozer, he's going to be a great player. I just want to see exactly how that fit is going to be with Zach Edey next to him, because that is a pretty, it's going to be a big front court, but it's going to be a big front court based on the fact that I don't know if they can play with each other. I don't think they can play off of each other. I should say. That's going to be something I gotta wait and see.
Now, here was the most intriguing move to me. Caleb Wilson to the Chicago Bulls at number 4. I think that he has the potential to be the best player from this draft. And I like the things that he was saying in his introductory press conference, saying he wants to be the greatest ever. That says a lot considering that the guy that many consider to be the greatest ever was a North Carolina Tar Heel that was drafted to be in a Chicago Bull, that being Michael Jordan. You got a fresh head coach in Tiago Splitter, chance to rebuild the culture in Chicago. A lot of excitement around this. I'm really intrigued by this to see what ends up happening.
And I had a chance to, like I said, see Caleb Wilson play. I think that, from a guy that can really do everything that you need on the basketball court, he can dribble, he can play in the post, he can bring the ball up. He's super talented. Like, I think that this was a great pick for Chicago. I think that Montez Buzelis, I think that those two will play well together. I think Josh Giddey will play well with Wilson as well. I know that we had our talk about Josh Giddey and what his role will be on the team, and is he that important to the team? I think that they all play a part into what this resurgence is going to be for the Chicago Bulls as well. Now, if you want me to be honest, if we're talking about a guy that I feel like needs to be on his way out in Chicago, Patrick Williams needs to be gone. I think that there's no room for him on this team, and I think that that was a mistake of a pick that they're trying to right the wrongs of that pick, years later. But I think that there's no place for him on that team because you got Caleb Wilson who can he can either play a tall three or or four position. That's where he's going to be more so listed at. Buzelis can play a two or three guard, and then you have Josh Giddey who's your point guard. Um, now now think about it, X. This is actually a really intriguing team because now you have Nick Claxton. So that is legit. That is a team that I'm actually interested to see how it's gonna all work together. But I am interested to see how this is gonna work because he could very well, like talent wise, he could be the best player out of this draft, and that's not crazy to believe.
Now, I did find it fascinating what the Los Angeles Clippers did at number 5. Keaton Vogler, that's an interesting selection that they made there. What does it tell you about the direction you believe they're going in?
I don't know because I don't know if they made the selection because of Darius Garland or I don't know. Honestly, it was like, okay, it's not talent because I've seen him play and I get it. He's a knockdown shooter. I just don't know exactly what was the motivation behind the pick because you know, he's a pretty he's a pretty solid player. He has a smooth game, but I didn't know if they made this because of the fact that they have Darius Garland or if they're trying to get their guard of the future. I didn't know what they were doing. But yeah, this is I say a C plus B minus pick for me. Just because I don't know what they made this pick for, but I think that he was the best available player at that time to get. I mean, I know that a lot of people saw the Darius A Cubs and people go later on, but I think that this was the best pick for them.
We talked a little about this already. Michael Brown Jr. from Louisville going to the Brooklyn Nets. It's a chance for him to go somewhere where he will be able to immediately really start getting his shots up, developing his game, going to a place that doesn't really have a true identity and doesn't really have a true number one, despite the season that we saw Michael Porter Jr. have last season, despite what we said about Julius Randle in part one and what he could potentially be for this team. I believe that they're going to end up taking the identity of Michael Brown Jr. And let me ask you this. Does he have any similarities to you to another Louisville guard from about a decade ago, that being Donovan Mitchell?
Their play styles have some similarities, but I think that I'm gonna lean against no, because I think that he could honestly be a more well-rounded player than Donovan Mitchell was at Louisville, which it sounds crazy, but I think that just in his freshman year, I think that he was might have been a more well-rounded player because, like I said, Donovan Mitchell didn't have the greatest Louisville team either. But when Michael Brown was off of the floor with Louisville, I think you saw a drastic difference. Like they were, they could have legit been one of the worst teams to actually see, like to actually watch if you if he was not on the floor because he did so much for that team. He was the engine. He was the catalyst. He was everything that that team needed him to be. And the fact that he was a freshman doing all of that, I think that Brooklyn got them one. And I think that this is a good situation in the sense of he doesn't have to worry about necessarily playing winning basketball. They can worry more about his development right now because that team is so young. It's more so about a developmental type of team than them going after, playoff spots or anything like that. I think they need to worry about what they need to worry about now, which is just themselves. Don't worry about as far as team success because you're not in a position to contend right now. You're not even in a position to contend for a playing spot, in my opinion. I think that you need to just worry about developing the young guys, developing your draft picks from last year, developing your top draft pick from this year, and then hopefully you can get some good contribution and mentorship from guys like Julius Randle and Michael Porter. And yeah, you can just worry about that right now. Like focus on what you got to focus on for right now. Don't worry about the rest.
And that's why I also didn't understand these conversations about them potentially being a bidder for Austin Reeves. That's somebody you bring into a win now, right now situation. And they are far, far off from being anything like that. Even if you bring in Austin Reeves into that situation, they're still not in win now mode.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, so you bring in Austin Reeves to do what? Because if you're barely scraping to get a play-in spot, then bringing in Austin Reeves was a waste of time. You are better off just letting Austin Reeves stay where he's at. You continue to do what you're doing, and then like just hope for the best that in a couple of years you'll be there. That's what I think you should do. So focus on your timeline more so than anything else. Don't worry about contending for playoff spots or playing spots.
Well, at number 7, we talked a little about this. Darius Acup Jr., unfortunately, is starting his career off with the Sacramento Kings. Honestly, KB, I mean, if you looked at his facial reactions when the selection was made, he didn't necessarily look the happiest about it.
Would you be happy about it?
You know where I stand when it comes to this dumpster fire of an organization.
I said it when it happened. If I was him, I ain't gonna lie. I'd think about going back to college. I'm going back to get some more money, and I'm going back to where it's safe. But then the problem is, King is gonna be there again next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. You can't escape him. You legit can't escape him. I think he's gonna be a hell of a player, but I just think that he's gonna fall victim to he's a product of his environment, his situation. That's where I think he's gonna be yet another Sacramento player that when his time is up, he is gonna leave. I think he is gonna leave. I think he's gonna be one of those people that's not gonna sign his rookie extension.
It would not surprise me if he had the best statistical line for rookies all across the board next season and wins Rookie of the Year. The problem is, I think he's doing that on a 20 to 25 win basketball team at best.
He's gonna have a green light because I think he's coming in starting out the gate. I think that there's no other choice at this point. I think he comes in, starts out the gate. They try to do what they can with, Sabonis, Levine, and DeRozan because they're also on contracts that nobody wants. So I think that he has the green light. They're gonna let it fly. Let it fly, man.
Well, I think DeMar DeRozan actually is not going to be there. Reports are surfacing that the Kings are listening to trade offers, and if they're not able to successfully trade him, they'll still probably part ways and just waive him.
Yeah, that's true. I think that it's just the Kings have dug themselves in such a hole that it's just like it's almost impossible because, like I said, Zach LaVine doesn't have the value that he once had. Nobody wants that contract. So, in the fact that you feel like that if you can't get the legit deal done for DeRozan, that you're gonna have to waive him, lets you know you've made some terrible deals in the past. Um, and I think that out of the people that they have on that team, Sabonis probably holds the most value. I think that you can plug him into a bunch of different situations as opposed to DeRozan and Zach LaVine, guys they're pretty much the same guys they've been for the duration of their careers.
And the
I
problem is with DeRozan, he's now an older version of that.
Yeah, and he works out of the mid range mostly. That is his game. That's his sweet area. So I think that Yeah, I think that Darius Acuff, he's going to be told to just, feel the game out, play his game. But I wouldn't be surprised either if him or Michael has the best statistical year because I think that they're going to have such a green light and they're going to have just, the ability to get to where they want to get to and take the shots that they want to take without guys in other situations having to, worry about, other guys on the floor. I think that they don't have these same situations that some of the other draft picks have.
I do have to ask you this though. Did it sting even more for you that he fell to the Kings considering that the Atlanta Hawks were right after them?
I'm gonna say this. Wouldn't it have been nice if he had fell to the Hawks at 8? Yes. But for me, I always felt that it was going to come down to two players. It was going to be Kingston Flemings and Ade Mara. I always had those two on my big board because I did not think that Darius Acuff was going to even get to 7, to be honest with you. If we're going to be completely, I didn't think he was going to drop all the way to 7.
If there wasn't a Darius Garland with the Clippers right now, I think he
He
would have been
he
taken
would
at
have
five.
been definitely taken at 5. And I
And
think
I was also somewhat surprised, despite everything we've said about Michael Brown Jr. I was somewhat surprised that Brooklyn didn't take him at number 6, considering that this is New York City and this is box office, Broadway, show business. You think about things like that. Darius Acuff Jr. definitely for sure would have put on a show, and he would have been the name that everybody would have known coming into those games. Not saying anything negative about Michael Brown Jr., but if you watch March Madness and when Arkansas played, Darius Acuff Jr. was out there putting on a show.
he gave off like a guy that plays at Rucker Park. He really does give off that type of vibe, like the swag, you know what I'm saying, like the ability. Like he looked like he just was a guy that grew up playing nothing but ones the whole time. Like that's what kind of guy he reminded me of. 6'2" point guard that can get his own shot. He's electric off the dribble. He's a Calipari guy, so I'm not going to disagree with you, but as far as when you asked me about the whole thing with the Hawks, I'm not mad at it because I think that was one of those things that the Hawks were going to take a point guard. I think they had in their mind that they were going to take a point guard regardless. So at that point, you take best available, and I think that while you didn't get the chance to get Michael Brown, you didn't get a chance to get Darius Acuff, Kingston Flemings was the guy. I think that he was always one of the guys that they had circled on their big board because of the fact that they weren't able to trade up. I think that they always had in their mind that some of those guys weren't going to be on the board by the time they picked at 8. I do think that.
And I really like the Kingston Flemings pick for Atlanta too,
Yeah.
considering that he is a real floor general of a point guard, but he also plays the other end of the ball effectively too on defense. And you think about putting him in there with guys like Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, that's a scary defensive backcourt to think about.
And you also have to look at it like this. He's 6'2", but he's a bouncy 6'2". He can get up there. And I think that he is a difference. See, a lot of people were comparing him to Trae Young because they were saying something about the small guards. I think that is a little bit different. Trae Young didn't play above the rim. This guy plays above the rim. He has a sweet stroke. He is a floor general. And like you said, he plays defense. So when you're talking about you can insert him into the lineup sometimes. He is gonna have to get stronger. That is something that we all know because he is a little frail, but that's going to come with time. And I think that when you insert him into, a lineup that has legit defenders like Nickeil Alexander Walker, Dyson Daniels, and even if you're talking about Kuminga when he comes back, those are guys that he's going to be able to play. He's going to be in some late game lineups, throughout the next coming years, if he's able to play effective defense, because we know what it's like to have to be able to, get into these one possession games. You need to stop. And we know if he can make it just difficult for some of these great guards that the Eastern Conference has, we looking for that. We love that. I think that the fan base is kind of split. And I'll tell you why. Because of the fact that pick, you could have went so many different ways. It was so many people that there was some people on the equation. We should have went 7-footer. Some people said we should have went point guard of the future. The important part is you addressed your position of need. That was the most important thing for me. you address a position of need and you live with the result because I think that it was going to be easier for you to go out there possibly and get a big 7-footer in free agency if all hope fails, you would have been able to because you still had the money to pay for a legit starting level or backup big.
Okay, but I got another comment to what you just said about fans who don't know how to feel about this. Some Hawks fans who are so conflicted about this, based off of some of the comments I saw with this, they showed me that they don't watch a lot of college basketball. Because I saw people who were saying that this was an uninspiring pick. Well, the only way that you would have been inspired by a pick is if it had been one of those big five that we've already talked about. And you weren't going to get one of them. You weren't getting Acuff. You weren't getting Caleb. You weren't getting Cam Boozer. I don't think Cam Boozer would have been inspiring the Hawks fans anyway, no matter the type of player that he is. You weren't getting Darren Peterson, and you were not getting AJ DeBonsa. So it would have been viewed as an uninspiring pick no matter what anyway. You and I watch enough college basketball to know that Kingston Flemings is exactly what this team appears to need. And I think that once the season starts up, I think that some of those folks who said uninspiring, I think they'll be inspired by what they're seeing.
I don't think that people understand. Like he was one of three freshmen. He was one of three freshmen to score 40 plus on the same day, which ain't never happened. So I think that when we're talking about lightning in a bottle, he can get hot fast. And I think if you watch the tournament, like we saw Houston. Houston has a legit basketball program. So for me, yeah, you might not be inspired, but I'd say that to say this. Are you looking at it from a casual fan base? Or are you looking at it from an actual fan of the team? Because if you're looking at it from a fan of the team, he feels exactly what you need. He feels the need that you have for that. You needed a backup point guard because I said the same thing when the CJ McCollum signing happened. Say that's cool, but I think that CJ works better off ball. I think that CJ he is better in the 2 guard role than he is as a person that bringing up the ball. I think you need a point guard coming off the bench that you can turn to because that's why I also looked at it like, okay, if we don't get it in the draft, we got to go to free agency and go get it because, and I think that these freshman guards that came out this year, the class was so loaded that it would have been a mistake possibly pass up on that because Ademara, while I know he was the defensive player of the year, I know all of this, but there's no telling what he's going to be like because we've seen some big men not be as mobile, not be, this is a different NBA. These guys are pulling these big men away from the basket all the time. And if he's not able to move, then you legit got a statue out there. So I would take the upside of Kingston Fleming right now. And I'm one of those believers that he's gonna give the Hawks exactly what they need as far as identity, as far as scheme fit, everything.
We'll talk about more about Adai in just a second because we're going to talk about where he ended up and why. I'm pretty sure we both believe that's going to end up being a problem because of where he ended up. We already talked about Morris Johnson and a little about Braden Berries in part one. Johnson going to the Mavericks at 9 to go to where his college coach is now the head coach in Dallas. And Braden Berries going 10 to the Milwaukee Bucks. The Warriors did something interesting at 11, though, taking Yatso Luxembourg with that pick. Now, we talked about it here multiple times throughout multiple episodes. Young players don't seem to get the development that they need in Golden State under Steve Kerr. But there was one that did get it. And he also came from the University of Michigan. And that was Jordan Poole. Can Yatso Luxembourg be a part of that exception in your opinion? Not just based off the fact that he came from Michigan and he got great coaching there with Dusty May, but also the fact that he's somebody who kind of fits the mold of what Steph and Draymond's journeys have been. Looked over, kind of came into things a little late, wasn't a highly rated prospect. He kind of almost fits the mold of what the two leaders of that team are all about and how they've had to go about their basketball journey.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought the Mavericks were gonna pick him at 9. I'm gonna be honest. I thought that he was gonna go before Morris Johnson. I did. I was like, he's out there, and I know that Dusty May was gonna pick one of his guys from Michigan. I just thought that he would have been the guy that was gonna get picked. Um, I think that he's able to help the Warriors out. Like I know that a lot of the commentators were saying he's able to help them out right now, and I really do believe that he'll be able to help the Warriors out right now. I think once Jimmy comes back into the fold, you have Steph Clay. No, I'm sorry, Steph, Jimmy, Yaxel, Draymond, Pods. I know they just re-signed Al Horford today. So I don't know what's going to happen with the Porzingis thing, but I do think Yaxel is he's going to be able to come in and be effective right away. I think that his skill set is something that the Warriors needed right now. So I do think that that was actually a pretty decent pick for me. Because I thought that he was going to be one of the first Michigan players to come off the board. I thought that he was going to go before Morris Johnson.
Yeah, I thought Yoxel was definitely going to end up going to Dallas. And if it
Yeah.
wasn't going to be him, I thought it was a Mara. I felt that Dusty was going to take one of his guys, which he did, but it just wasn't the one that I thought. Well, a
Yeah.
Mara did end up being selected. The pick after Yoxel Luxembourg is going to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that should be frightening for the rest of the league because even though we don't know exactly what he's going to end up becoming, he's going to the best situation he possibly could have went to.
He's going to the best situation. But I'm gonna also tell you, X, this signal, and I told you this when it happened. They did this to combat Wemby. You when you're talking about what Wemby did to Chet in that Western Conference Finals, you need all the help that you can get. Now, here's going to be the problem though. What is he going to do when Wemby stretches out to the 3 point line? Is he going to be mobile enough to stick with him? Because I think it's going to be one of those situations where they are going to have sometimes a lineup where him and Chet are on the court at the same time, where Chet could be possibly playing as like a roamer and then possibly being effective like that against Wemby. Now, if that makes sense, if that's what you're going to do, because you're going to more than likely lose Hartenstein. Now you have 2 7 footers because, like I said, you need size, but you also need a defensive presence to go against a guy like Wemby who can get his shot off at any time. And I think that that playoff series kind of scared them. They knew if a Daymar was was still on the board at their pick, they had to go get him. I think that that was something they couldn't pass up. Now, a lot of people saying that he should have went prior to that. I mean, you could say that, but it was going to be one of those situations where we don't know what he's going to be because that Michigan team was pretty loaded. It was pretty loaded last year, and I can't say like for everything that they had, I can't say that it was a mistake passing up on him because, like I said, I think that this just was a loaded class. But I do think the Thunder, Sam Presti's still playing chess. He's still playing chess. Being able to move the pieces that he's moved, making deals during the trade after the first night, I think they, is a genius.
No, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. But San Antonio also made a move to combat that too later on in the first round, going to get Terrace Reed from UConn. And originally, that pick was going to be for the Denver Nuggets. And I'm like, okay, that's a legit backup big for Jokic. And then they trade the pick to San Antonio. And I'm like, well, that is to combat the fact that Adai Mara was taken earlier by the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, and I kind of feel bad for Jokic because he definitely needs a quality backup big because I didn't really get much out of that Jonas Valanciunas signing. I think that he needed a legit guy that could kind of take the pressure off of him. But hey, what a pickup from the San Antonio Spurs because, like I said, they're gonna have to get right back to work coming into next season where they're gonna have a lot of expectations to get back to where they were because of the fact that they got embarrassed. And I think that Wemby, he's going to be out to prove a lot, but he's going to need a guy that can kind of help him out as well to where, those situations like the OG Anunoby tipping don't happen because a guy like that can go out on the floor. Terrence Reed can go right on that floor in a situation like that just for rebounding purposes only. So, I love the pick. I love the pick. I think that that was one of the low key underrated picks of the first round.
So I got two more questions about this, and then we're gonna wrap up. Are you surprised that Kory Pete fell as far as he did in the draft? And are you surprised that Isaiah Stewart fell into the second round of the draft?
Yes and yes.
Not
I thought
no, hold on, not Isaiah Stewart. Excuse me, Isaiah Evans.
not as surprised with Isaiah Evans, Kobe Pete a little bit, because I had him in the high 20s range. I had him in the high 20s range. I thought that he could have been mid 20s, but I definitely had him in the high 20s as far as like, well, I said it's the early 20s. Had him in the early 20s. Um, it kind of surprised me that he fell all the way to the end of the first round, but mm, I think that it was a circumstantial type of thing. I think that it just happened to be that, but
So let's
I,
explain. Let's explain to everybody how this actually ended up happening. Dallas had the number 30 pick, so he was initially you're going to say he was drafted by the Dallas Mavericks. They traded that pick to the New York Knicks, who then traded the pick to the Phoenix Suns. So Kory Pete playing his college basketball at Arizona. Do you like the fact that he's going to get to remain in Arizona to start off his NBA career?
oh yeah, definitely. You know what I'm saying? Like it helps when the guy gets to stay in a familiar setting. And with like the adjustment isn't as bad as guys that are maybe having to move across the country to basically start their NBA careers. Like they're having to adjust the stuff on the fly where he doesn't have, well, he's gonna have to adjust to the speed of the NBA. Like, but as far as his lifestyle, this is pretty much gonna be the same thing. You know, being able to go back to his college coach and say, and get advice. You know what I'm saying? Being able to be near the college that he, just finished playing ball at. Like, I think all of that factors into a guy like, having a successful year. Because some of that stuff, it's hard to just within a couple of months to going somewhere off that you ain't probably never even visited in your life. Going from like the south all the way up north, it's different. It's different. It's a culture change. It's a major shift. So I think that this helps him. I think this helps him a lot. So he gets to stay where he's at.
Now, although Isaiah Evans fell to the second round, I think he went to the right situation, being drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves.
And we always talk about circumstances and where guys are drafted and how that plays a part into how successful they are in their NBA careers. Think it was right fit, right timing. Was I surprised that he fell? Not necessarily surprised, but you have second round talent, you have first round talent that happens to just fall into the second round. This happens all the time. So I think that he's going to be a contributor for them as well when they have a lot of questions surrounding them. I think that, but this is the right fit for them. I think that he's going to produce early. I think that this is one of those guys that we could go back and be like, I can't believe that he fell to the second round. This is one of those guys.
And as Terrence Shannon Jr. continues to develop for them as well, it's interesting how Minnesota is able to get these gems that are continuing to fall their way. And I look at Isaiah Evans' situation, and honestly, it reminds me of what Lamar Jackson went through in 2018. Even though Lamar Jackson didn't fall to the second round, he was the very last pick of the first round. And as the camera just kept showing Isaiah Evans throughout the night, I'm just sitting there, and the visual of Lamar Jackson in the green room in the NFL draft in 2018, it just pops in my head. And then the team he ends up being drafted by, the Baltimore Ravens. Well run organization, perfect fit, going to be all about your development. I honestly think that this is a blessing in disguise that this happened to Isaiah Evans.
Yeah, because like I said, sometimes you could be a guy that goes in the first round, but you go to one of the worst situations in the NBA, and that plays a part in derailing your career. I mean, it happens all the time. So it's like you're going to a team that legit just came off of making it to the second round, who's been in the conference finals a couple of times in the last 4 years. So I think that you can learn a lot from the guys that are around you because, like I said, veteran leadership, having the right vets around you plays a part into everything. So I think that this is the best fit for him, or one of the best fits for him.
Him being able to sit behind Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels, and you can throw LaMelo Ball in that conversation now since he was included in the trade. Yeah, I think this is excellent for him that this ended up happening in the long term. Maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, I think this will end up being a great thing to happen for him, just like Lamar Jackson going to the Baltimore Ravens, being able to sit behind a veteran in Joe Flacco and learn from him and just sit and develop. And when your number's called, just be ready. It's not about where it happens. It's all about when you get your opportunities, what you do with them.
Yeah, just play free basketball. Like I said, the pressure is not on you because your responsibility and your workload in your rookie season, I don't think it's going to be a lot just because of the guys that you have in front of you. Like you said, with Shannon Jr. being, developing like he did last year, I think that's going to open more, even more minutes up with, for him this year. And I think that you just being behind the right guys, being able to like kind of take that mentorship from them. I think that's going to play a part in. I think he's going to be. That's why I think that he's going to be successful as opposed to some other guys that were drafted higher but got drafted worse organization. So I think that he's in the right situation.
But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. We thank everybody for tuning in for the first 40 episodes this show. And we hope that y'all stick around for the next 40 because we got more great things to come. For X, I'm KB. But for KB, I'm X. And we're saying peace.
Peace.